Doctors and nurses of Reddit who have delivered babies to mothers who clearly cheated on their husbands. What was that like? My brother had a surprise baby this way. He and a co-worker had a one-night stand while she was broken up with her ex. She gets back with her ex. Ends up pregnant. Flash forward to the delivery day. The day my brother sends me a picture of a random baby out of the blue and says, "I think I am a dad." She is white. Her boyfriend is black. My brother is white. Baby came out looking very white. I don't know how it went down in the hospital room, but I know they separated very soon after. My brother went to visit her in the hospital and asked her if she would let him take a paternity test. She agreed and it came back positive a week later. And that's how I got my surprise nephew. Edit to answer questions and clarify some things. Everyone is fine. My brother took full responsibility from day one. They ended up dating or having another child together and are now separated with full split custody, no courts involved. I know how genetics work. I have a mixed sister and mixed children. My kids are Mexican, Puerto Rican and 11 kinds of European. They came out very brown and are now pasty white like me. One has brown eyes and one has green eyes. I do understand everyone's experience may vary. When I say very white, I mean it. He was practically translucent. The baby looked just like my brother's baby photos. And nothing at all like the boyfriend. We just kinda knew. But still, a test was the only way to know. Everyone in our family was surprised, of course, but we all embraced the situation with love and understanding. When my baby was born, people asked me if her father was Polynesian. Nope. He's a skinny white man. There was no doubt he was the father. She was born with thick black hair. She was a big baby, 4 kg, and had jaundice, which made her look very tan. The hair fell out. The jaundice went away. She thinned out and I now have a strawberry blonde haired 2-year-old that looks exactly like her papa. But man, if I hadn't known he was the only man I'd slept with, I would have some serious doubts. Had a patient who came into ER for UT with her boyfriend of 4 months. His words: she was 19, acting extremely dramatic for just having UT. We tell her we need urine. She urges us to cath her, which is really unusual, but she says she can't pee, so me and other nurse assume the position to put in a catheter with her lying on the gurney. At this point, nurse screams, "Call land." She's crowning. Land nurse gets in just in time to grab the child as it shoots out into her hands and is a living, breathing baby. The girl swears she had no idea she was pregnant. They wheel her off to postpartum and the guy is just kind of left standing there, dumbstruck. We only been dating 4 months. I had no idea she was pregnant. He never mentioned it at all, as he just buried his head in his knees while he was sitting on the floor against the hallway wall. I felt so bad for the guy. Newborn had chlamydia. Got it from the mom, obviously. So the mom admits she was cheating on the dad. Because there's no other way to explain that one. Except the dad was cheating too, with the other guy's girlfriend. And all 4 of them had chlamydia, with no idea who had it first. They also had no idea who the actual dad was. That was a rodeo. Edit. Well, that's what I get for redditing before bed. Let's be honest. Everything we know about chlamydia, we learned from teen romcoms. Mother to be warned. This could go one of 2 ways prior to delivery. Wasn't sure what she meant. She was white, as was her husband. Delivered baby was black. Then it all made sense. Edit. 1. This happened about 4 years ago. Sorry to be anticlimactic, but I don't know where they are today or how the situation turned out. I can tell you that the dad left the room immediately and the mom burst into tears. So this leads me to believe he might have had a suspicion. Otherwise there might have been a little more shock. I honestly don't know. 2. Yes, I did mean to say mixed and not black. 3. I never said I was a doctor. 4. Yes, I did just join Reddit 5 days ago. Does that make my story less interesting? Haha, sorry for being new. Anesthesiologist here. C-sections are typically done under spinal anesthesia, and we're the ones at the head of the table keeping the mother calm and talking her through the procedure while the surgeons operate. I've seen it more than once, but I remember one in particular when the parents were both very Caucasian, and the baby was very much not. The actual father obviously had to be very dark-skinned. At delivery, when the not father saw the baby, he just looked down at his wife, who was starting to cry, and calmly said, "You ducking whore," and walked out. She started screaming for him to come back, but there wasn't much she could do since she was, still being operated on. She lost it to the point I eventually had to sedate her just a bit because she was in danger of injuring herself. As far as I know, her husband never came back to the hospital. I don't know what happened after that. Not exactly the situation you're asking for, but Reddit loves a good crazy mill story. My dad is blonde and my mom is brunette. I came out of the womb with fiery red hair. My dad's mom made a huge fuss about my mom cheating on my dad and had to be escorted out of the hospital. My grandmother's own mother had flaming red hair, which she apparently forgot until my great-grandmother held me for the first time and said, "I always wanted a baby with my red hair." Edit. Holy it. I woke up to a lot of notifications. To clarify, I was very tired last night and did not phrase this well. My dad's mom accused my mom of cheating, forgetting that my dad's grandmother had red hair. She was in her 80s. Late in life babies are actually common in my dad's family, and spent her entire life in rural Alabama and Mississippi. So she wasn't exactly a biologist or geneticist. Additionally, she was extremely mentally ill, and these delusional temper tantrums were not uncommon. I'm of Irish descent, extremely pale, freckled, wavy dark hair and darker green eyes. My husband is half Native American, half German, dark hair and slightly wavy as well. My daughter came out with light brown curly hair and ever so slight strawberry blonde pieces mixed throughout. Curls for days. And the nurse goes, "Wow, where did you get that hair?" Knowing I had similar color as a baby and my mother has kinky curly hair. My husband, in a room full of nurses, goes, "I don't know, jaded. Where did she get that hair? I could have ducking killed him." Edit. Please no one tell my husband how much traction this story got. It'll just make him cocky and the jokes will get worse. I already have a rough time finding him hats. Not a doctor or nurse, but in undergrad I had a buddy, Caucasian, who'd been dating the same girl, also Caucasian, for a while. She gets knocked up. He proposes. Fast forward a few months and both families are eagerly waiting at the hospital to meet the baby. The baby comes out black. Everyone is in shock. Girl is frantically trying to convince everyone that there's been a misunderstanding. My buddy called off the engagement immediately, returned the ring, and never looked back. I have a white friend who is a superman of a dad. When his third child was born, she was obviously of mixed race. His white wife had an affair with a black man. The wife also had substance abuse issues before this pregnancy and was no longer dependable or stable as a mother. So my friend immediately divorced her and took custody of the kids. All of them. He's been raising his 2 bio kids and the third child, who isn't technically his, for the past decade. She's his princess and he loves her exactly like the other 2. To answer a couple of questions, he is a straight man who has not remarried. He's done this all on his own. Dated here and there, but nothing serious yet. He's too busy with 3 kids, full-time career, and a small business to run. Also, bio dad to the third child waived his rights immediately when he found out about her birth. He was mom's dealer and their fling was a one-time thing that resulted in pregnancy. He had zero interest in fatherhood. Edited again to add, some people say how they could never raise another man's child, especially one that was a product of adultery. But you have to consider that my friend went through the entire pregnancy preparing for this baby that he thought was his. So he bought the baby gear, painted a nursery, went to the DR appointments, etc. He was heavily invested in this baby before she was ever born. He already loved her and felt she was his. So it wasn't a big leap for him to take her on as his own. Had 2 women give birth a few days apart on my floor. Turns out they actually had the same baby daddy. The father of the 2 newborns got both patients pregnant around the same time. It was an interesting day for the social worker. Not a doctor, but my best friend's brother-in-law has 2 black parents and came out completely white. DNA test confirmed they were both his parents. It just be like that sometimes. Edit. I'm only guessing they tested the mother as well to rule out any possibility of an accidental swap at the hospital. Mayo y'all savage. Not a doctor, but someone in my extended family had a baby. 2 Middle Eastern parents that turned out to be dark-skinned. The father of the baby filed for divorce, even though the mother kept saying the baby was his. A few years later, they found out that the mother's great-grandmother was African and that the baby obtained strong genes from her. They didn't get back together because too much had gone down at that point. But the mother was right all along. TLDR, 2 Middle Easterns had dark-skinned baby. Husband divorced, but later it was found out that it was genetics. Super awkward for everyone involved. The husband was only in the room for a bit then left and didn't see him again. The FOB, father of baby, showed up after the baby was born. I've also had where they didn't know whose baby it was, so both guys were present to see who they thought it was. Not exactly cheating, but definitely an awkward situation. During my OB rotation in med school, I was caring for a patient with a very large family, the kind that all wanted to be part of the delivery process from beginning to end. They were having a baby girl, and the room was absolutely filled from wall to wall with pink presents, bassinets, blankets, clothing, embroidered quilts, you name it. Anyways, I deliver the baby and I'm horrified, thinking there was some sort of mutation in the baby's V. After my initial shock, I realized it was simply a perfectly normal looking baby D and testicles. The "congrats, it's a boy" was met with shock instead of excitement initially, but then everyone was so happy after understanding he was perfectly healthy. Apparently, even with good prenatal care, you can miss the male genitalia on ultrasounds about 1% of the time. Not a cheating story, but my sister's friend was born fair-skinned with red hair and green hazel eye colored. Both parents are dark-skinned with black hair and brown eyes. When her mom gave birth, everyone in the room went silent. However, the father knew that his wife didn't cheat. Turned out, his wife's great-great-grandmother had red hair and fair skin. However, hospital protocol made both parents get a DNA test, and everything was okay. I'm a nurse. I have seen quite a few situations where dad turns out not to be dad, but never because of the color of the newborn. I have, however, seen an absolute duck ton of kids who are born and don't look like the same ethnicity as their parents for days or sometimes a couple of weeks. Babies often look darker when they are born. Just saying. Some of these anecdotal stories might not necessarily be true. I was told this story by a nurse. Veracity might be clouded by time, but a birth of the couple's third child. The couple was white. The baby was obviously of Pacific Islander descent. Everyone went very quiet. The nurse telling me the story said she took a moment of silence as she realized what had happened. Then she tried to act normally, but waiting for the outburst. She said the tension was unreal. The guy stared for a minute at a child that was very obviously not his. The mum was already in tears and talking very fast. The guy stood up, looked around for a minute, then left the room. Never said a word. He wasn't seen again at the hospital. The mum spent the rest of the day on her phone. The nurse doesn't think she ever found him. The last part is even more distantly related gossip, but allegedly the father cut all ties immediately, speaking regarding care of his 2 actual kids only through his lawyer. If any of that is true, I take my hat off to the guy. Edit. Just to clarify, the story goes he was very much into looking after his actual kids, but wanted nothing further to do with the mum or the kid that wasn't his. He lawyered up to avoid potential emotional fallout, which to me is pretty classy, again, if true. Obligatory, not a doctor nurse, but both of my parents have blonde hair. When I was born, my hair was strawberry blonde. My paternal grandparents lost their it and accused my mom of cheating because red tinted hair didn't run in their family. However, it ran in my mom's family with a redhead popping up every now and then. My paternal grandparents didn't know that. They just really hated my mom, so looked for excuses to drag her down. It wasn't until I stopped looking like a potato, as most newborns do, and started looking like a person when my dad's family features came through enough to make them apologize to my mom. In high school, my gym teacher was married to the biology teacher, who was also really good friends with my math teacher. Always saw them chatting and walking together. Well, the bio teacher got pregnant, and when she brought the baby in, there was an unignorable resemblance to the math teacher. Her husband ended up driving to the nearest hospital and shooting himself dead in the parking lot. Was a big scandal at our relatively small private school. One of a few actually. My brother married a half Korean, half white woman who had 3 girls to the same Mexican guy. The first girl looks Latina. The second girl looks Pacific Islander. The third girl has platinum blonde hair and icy blue eyes. They look nothing alike. And yet if you look at their lineage it all makes sense. I don't know if this ever caused any issues between her and her ex, but I could understand if an eyebrow was raised in the third one. Now she has a 4th girl with my brother and she looks nothing like the other 3. Just standard brown hair, brown eyed white girl. I know this ain't super relevant to the question but it always entertains me. Little different twist. I am Ukrainian. My great grandfather was Crimean Tatar, who are mixed Turkic and Mongolian. My wife is Ukrainian and Italian. My first boy was blonde. My second was dark haired, dark skinned, and has the classic almond shaped Asiatic eyes. Mongolian spot. Despite the fact that we know my family history, we ordered a test to make sure there was no separation at birth stuff. C-section. Yep. That's our boy. You would never know looking at us that that boy is genetically related to us. And we love him to pieces. Edit. Autocorrect. No idea what the doctors thought, but I had a phone call from the wife asking for my blood type while they were in the hospital the next day, and I ducked home. I'm A. The wife is O. Bub is A+. I've done enough science to know where that's going. Have done DNA testing. I'm 100% the dad. Still not sure how to get more interesting science info about the myriad markers that apparently exist. A friend of mine tells the story of his aunt giving birth, in the 1970s or 80s, to a baby that at first glance appeared to be of Asian descent. Aunt and her husband are both Caucasian Midwesterners from long lines of the same sort. Going back to Germany, there was evidently a shocked moment, and then the aunt's father, my friend's grandfather, quipped, "Well, they say 1 in 7 babies is born Chinese," and everyone laughed. The tension broke. Long enough for the doctor, also a white Midwesterner of German stock, said that likely the kid's color is just off due to the events of the birth. That baby is now a man in his 30s or 40s, and looks like your typical Midwesterner. He just had some tinge to his skin for a few hours following the birth, plus some dark hair at birth that has since lightened up. Okay, story from a friend of my brother's. She worked as a nurse and a woman and her husband came in. They were both white, and she delivered a child that was black. The husband immediately starts saying WTF, while she is going on and on about dormant trays and everything. He orders a DNA test. While this is going on, her mother and stepdad show up. The stepdad is black. After the testing is done, the DNA test ends up showing that the baby is the stepdad's. Her husband instantly dropped her and cut ties. Edit. In response to some comments, this didn't happen over the course of a couple of hours. Husband hung out, albeit reluctantly, until things were conclusive. Once testing showed it wasn't his baby, they tested the stepdad. Probably suspected something. I wasn't there, I don't know the deeper details. Probably going to get buried but still wanna share. Not my story. It's the story of my dad's friend. In high school, my dad's friend Cole was always into this girl Cindy, but she was always dating this one guy Jimmy. Jimmy breaks up with Cindy and she goes off the rails sleeping with everyone. Cole sees it as his chance to be the good guy and starts dating her. I'm not sure, but they either had a Ross and Rachel thing where they kept on breaking up and getting back together. She broke up with him, or that she was always cheating on him, especially if Jimmy was hinting at them getting back together. They never did though, and he'd just sleep with her. But Carl never listened to my dad or his friends because of blind love. She was perfect in his eyes. So high school is over and Carl goes to the army. They weren't officially dating, but every time he was able to come back he'd end up with her a night or two. My dad and his friends knew that she was sleeping around the whole time, but Carl didn't care. Eventually, while he was still serving, she convinced him that they were dating again. He proposed to her and she looked around for a house for them that he paid for with his army money. He comes back for good and they get married. A year later they have a beautiful baby girl together. That baby girl is his everything. This guy grew up a migrant worker and now he has his high school sweetheart, a home, a decent job, and his own little princess. 5 years later his wife gets pregnant again. This time she has a baby boy. Now he has to start working more to be able to care for the new baby while mom continues to be a stay-at-home mom. When the son is around 2 and the girl is around 7, he comes home to divorce papers and all his clothes packed up. Turns out the lovely house the wife had to have was because it made her the next door neighbor to Jimmy. This entire time she was still sleeping with him despite him also having a partner. The little girl and baby boy Carl thought were his weren't. They were Jimmy's kids, and Cindy knew it. Jimmy's partner had left him, so he finally wanted to be a family man, and Cindy jumped at the chance, kicking out Carl and divorcing him. He went into a depression and ended up losing his job because of it. I'm not sure what happened after that, but I hope Cole found a nice loving girl in the end. Edit. Wow. I didn't expect this to get so popular. I just wanted to add that this was a story. It really did happen. That my dad had told me when my ex-boyfriend cheated on me, and I was thinking about getting back together with him again because he was oh so sorry. My dad had to watch as his friend went through all of this and they couldn't do anything because he didn't want to be saved. He didn't want the same thing to happen to me, so that's why he talked to me about this when I was 14 and dating a known player. My parents are very big on learn from my mistakes and I'm very grateful for that. Though in this instance it was learn from my friend's mistakes. Especially since had I not been told this I would have had this exact thing happen to me. But with him having kids with other women. So those of you saying things like, he was asking for it, and how could he get her to respect himself when not even he did? You're right. If all of your friends are telling you someone isn't good for you, listen to them. Edit 2. So a lot of people seem confused. First, Cole stopped serving right before they got married. But he still worked in a job that requires long hours, and Cindy was a stay-at-home mom, so she still had plenty of time to cheat even though he wasn't gone for months, weeks on end. Second, I was pretty young when my dad told me this, so I didn't think to ask how come he never thought it was weird that their neighbor happened to be Cindy's ex that she frequently left him for in high school. I just thought he must have thought it was one hell of a coincidence. As someone else said, it's hard to see the truth when you're wearing rose-colored glasses. Third, as for the house situation, that's also foggy. I'm not sure if he felt bad about having to kick them out. I think Jimmy was only renting the house next door. If he thought letting her have the house would make her change her mind. Or if even though they used his money to buy it, it was under her name. Fourth, I think he still tried to be in the kid's life after, but neither of the birth parents wanted him to. And despite the fact that he truly did love them, he just could look at them without being reminded of what happened. It's sometimes best not to leap to conclusions too quickly. When I was born, my skin was a little blue. Thankfully my dad didn't get angry and accuse my mum of ducking a smurf. So a friend of mine, he is unfortunately dead, had cancer, and he was dating a girl for about 2 years. He then discovered he had cancer and that he would live at best 1 more year. His girlfriend announced to him a week later that she was pregnant. They were both white. He kept on saying that life is a joke. He was happy because he would have a baby now, but sad because he would die in a year. Anyway, 9 months later the baby was born and it was black. He then disappeared 4 weeks and we learned that he had died a month later. Felt so ducking sorry. My wife's best friend is a doctor who delivers babies. I'll ask and get back to you all. Edit. A couple of stories came in. She delivered one baby where the father and mother were acting really awkward, but he was around during labor, and when it came time to push, the man just walked out and left the room. Apparently the issue was they were just friends and he lived in another state with his wife and kids. Another woman had an affair with her cousin's husband and got pregnant, calling him her fiancé registered sign. Her own husband died during this period and it prompted her to go out and sleep with a few other one-night stands. At this point she tried to get an abortion, but she was turned away because she was overweight and hypertensive, making the procedure too risky. She never followed up with the DR and gained weight to over 400 pounds. It was too late for an abortion at this point, and she had been taking medication for the hypertensive thing, and the medication can cause death deformities. When she delivered, it took the entire staff to prevent her from having a stroke in the baby's kidneys. Do they work? No one knows. Most of the stories are that the man cheated. If the mother cheats, there's no real reason to bring it up, so they don't really know. Lots of having to tell a mother who has only slept with one man that she and her baby have chlamydia. No weird stories of white babies to black parents or vice versa. Also, if my wife's friend sees this, she will know who it is. Please just don't go through my history and judge me for my crayon colored POC registered sign mon picture. Wasn't there, but my cousin found out real quick when his girlfriend's kid was black and neither he nor the girlfriend were. The funny thing is, he's the one taking care of him, as his girlfriend was an even bigger piece of work than he was and keeps showing time and time again that she's not fit to care for a child. I had a female patient come in with abdominal pain. Pregnancy test was positive. She was with her husband who, evidently, had a vasectomy about a year prior. I slowly backed out of the room after that one. Edit. I know it's possible, just improbable. My so and I just had our first in January. He has brown hair and I'm blonde. When she arrived, the nurse exclaimed, "Whoa, look at that red hair." We know it's a recessive gene, but it wasn't the very first thing we expected to hear. We looked at each other for a moment and I said, in my drugged and exhausted post-labor stupor, "I swear she's yours." From my friend who was a delivery nurse for years. The mother takes the doctor aside and makes him promise to let her know the color of the baby the instant he knows. The baby is born and the doctor announces to mom, "Congratulations on your beautiful, healthy white baby." The father just walked right out the room and they never found anything more out about it. We had a very sweet blonde-haired blue-eyed mom and dad along with their entire extended family in the room for a delivery one busy afternoon at work. Think aunts, uncles, cousins, grandma and grandpa too. The baby is born and as the doctor places her on the mom's chest the first words out of her mouth are, "That's not my baby. That's not my baby." The baby in question, still attached at the umbilical cord, has beautiful dark curly black hair and dark skin. The nurse looks at her and tells her that this is definitely her baby because she's still attached to you, and she, not so quietly, tells the nurse, "There's no way. I never slept with a black man. It's not mine." The father is standing there silent, not sure what to do. Long awkward silence fills the room. We clean her and baby up as cheerfully as we can. We see the extended family filter out of the room and the father leave to get a cigarette. About 10 minutes later a tall black guy walks up to our front desk asking how to get to the patient in question's room. I don't think I've ever wanted to see an Ask Reddit question answered so badly in my life.